Well, good afternoon and welcome to the pre-planning commission meeting for the city of Frederick. And this is our January meeting prior to our hearing on Monday. The first thing to talk about is a continuance for PC 18-397, the architectural review for Bloomfields.
You're on mute.
You're on mute.
They requested that to be continued I think we've got it down for 60 days to follow with another plan that they have going through at the same time. And we thought they could move forward together. So we went ahead and placed that on a continuance, and also because it's been advertised already for this hearing. So people can follow it at that, when it's going to be heard.
Okay. Commissioner Beatty, any questions?
Commissioner Beatty, no questions, thanks.
Okay, I'm good also. So election of officers. Gabrielle, do you want to set up that conversation? I know we did talk about it a little bit.
Sure. So the rules of procedure, I believe it's in the rules. Yes, not the charter. Require that every January the Planning Commission does elect its chair, vice chair, and secretary positions. So that is on our agenda for Monday evening. The chair and the secretary do have responsibilities that we were discussing a little bit about the Mylar recordation signing. Basically, those are the subdivision plats. When they get ready to go over to the courthouse, they come in the form of a nice heavy Mylar weighted recording document. And along with the health department at Frederick County, the chair or the chair or secretary sign those Mylars on behalf of the city. It is something that, of course, staff is reviewing and okaying, and we're not going to hand you something to sign that isn't ready to be signed. So it does go through a lengthy review process, both for our legal department, our engineering department, and our planning department before we queue it up to advise the chair or secretary that it needs to be signed. So that is a responsibility of those positions. Obviously, the vice chair leads the meeting in the absence of the chair. So we'll also want to make sure we have everyone prepared to carry out the duties as necessary in the absence of anybody. So that is scheduled for Monday.
And is it, in my experience, this hasn't happened yet, but is it expected that if both the chair and the vice chair were not here, then the secretary would lead the meeting?
Correct.
Okay, and Commissioner Manalis just joined us. So good afternoon. Sorry it took you so long to get on. We actually just went through a continuance and election of officers. Okay. So let me first ask Commissioner Beatty if you have any questions about the election.
Commissioner Beatty, the only comment I'd make is, and it seems ranking-wise, I guess you put it that way, that it would be up to Dorothy or myself to be secretary. And I'd defer to her if she'd like to be secretary. If not, I wouldn't mind filling that role because I do work and live downtown, so.
By all means, feel free.
I do have to make one comment. Dorothy is looking very glamorous today.
Why, thank you. Thank you
I
much.
Don't know if those are new glasses, but and then she was waving like this when she was turning the secretary thing down. So
yes.
Anyway.
Thank you. Yes.
And Commissioner Beatty, I do appreciate you bringing that up. This process has always been a little casual. It's been casual in exactly the way that you just made it so. People make comments and then, yes, we do have a motion, but it's generally a conversation, just as we had. So I appreciate the spirit of which you asked that question and made that comment. And Commissioner Manalis, anything from you relative to elections other than, okay.
Nothing. I think so Joan is going to be the vice has requested or would like to get approval to be the chair, co-chair, vice chair? Okay, that's fine.
She included that in that comment in an email
Yep.
that she had sent out.
Thank you.
So, all right. So now we go into, I guess, our regular agenda. We have quite a few new business items. The first thing is the preliminary plat and final site plan for Ren Quarter.
We did have the architecturals for Ren Quarter that we still have on the agenda. So we've got the architecturals, but then the very closely associated preliminary plat.
Oh, sorry, I went right past that. I zipped past that and went to new business. So you are exactly right. So both of those.
Okay, so we're looking at, is it the architecturals are first, right?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, and this was for including that Brownland model detail for the Ren Quarter and their design that was excluded from the package originally when you went through the system because they didn't have a detail on their site plan for that type of home. So they are bringing back that for the elevations to be included in the design booklet and part of their project. It is only for 5 lots at this time. And they will, the only condition that we're asking is that it is included in the complete architectural package and design booklet there. That's it.
And nothing added since the workshop, correct?
No.
Okay. Commissioner Beatty, any questions, comments?
Commissioner Beatty, no questions, thanks.
Commissioner Manalis.
Commissioner Manellis, no questions or comments. Thank you.
Okay. So now let's go to Ren Quarter, the combined preliminary plat and final site plan.
And like I was saying, this is to provide those details on the site plan for that model specifically to have an attached side garage. And what they have done is asked that their details for D3 and D4 single family homes both allow for that type of unit. We have mentioned in the staff report that the D4 detail more than likely would not accommodate a side garage, 2-car garage, which they need to have their parking on site. But the applicant's stating that they do not want to overlook any possibility, so they're leaving that as a request to be approved also. And as for any approvals, we're just looking for the approval of the detail, the plan as it is, with a number of cleanup items as conditions.
And nothing added since the workshop.
Correct.
Commissioner Beatty, any questions, comments?
Commissioner Beatty, no questions, thanks.
And Commissioner Manalis.
Commissioner Manellis, no questions. Thank you.
Okay. Me either. Okay, so next one, I believe, is Freedom Court, and this is Sharon.
Hello, yes, I'm ready. Gabrielle, did you want to add anything before I start? Hearing nothing, I'm going to proceed.
Yep,
All
you're
right,
good
since
now,
we
right?
last talked about this project, nothing, it's really ready to go. As I mentioned in the staff report, and for anyone who might be listening, this is a light industrial property up on Thomas Johnson Drive at the intersection of Thomas Johnson and Hayward Court. Locally, it's often referred to as the old Board of Education site. It's been owned by Freedom Court LLC for probably about since 2013, I believe. The goal of the project is to demolish the existing building and to reconstruct a new mini self-storage facility with a storage yard for recreational vehicles. The use is permitted in the zone, and the applicant has only had a few I won't say glitches, but there have been a few issues that we've had to resolve over time. One was the lighting. When earlier in the process, there was some spillover. I believe when we talked earlier, the applicant has resolved the spillover of lighting on the lighting plan. And so there's zero spillover, which is great. The parking and loading modification request features a way to address both a reduced need for large parking spaces and an increased need for smaller ones to allow people to park their vehicles or personal vehicles close to the building and load, because that's primarily what this is. This is a self-storage facility. So instead of the 3 large loading facilities that would ordinarily be required for a typical industrial use, this mini self-storage use by its nature does not need that. That doesn't need to accommodate those large tractor trailers. So the applicant has proposed 12 smaller ones. The smaller ones, though, that they're proposing are larger actually than our code small spaces. So it will really allow for a much broader variety of vehicles to park close to the building. Now, as far as the modification for parking, they're within 7 spaces of their of the requirement, but the design compensating feature of 12 smaller spaces that will allow more vehicles to park closer to the building, we support. Number one, the facility doesn't have long-term customer parking to begin with, and we think that will be really a nice compensating feature. As we talked earlier during the workshop, there's quite a bit of landscaping, and at first glance, I thought that was the compensating design feature because I was so thrilled to see the intensification of landscaping, not only internal to the parking area, but around the perimeter of the property. And with they have all of their certificates for adequate public facilities, and with the exception of a survey comment, which we believe is very easily remedied, they're ready to go.
Okay, that was very thorough. Thank you and helpful. Commissioner Beatty, any questions?
Commissioner Beatty, no questions. Thank you. Commissioner
Manalis.
I just had a question on page 5 where it talks about stormwater management and it talks about hotspots. It says vehicle storage and loading and unloading areas are considered stormwater hotspots, which may have an increased potential for stormwater contamination. Okay, so their stormwater plan is meeting the requirement of, was it the Maryland, Division of Environment? I don't know what that is.
That's correct.
Yes.
That's correct. They actually have incorporated in their stormwater plan, which was approved, the additional guidelines from the hotspot. And that actually is a term that applies to almost anywhere you have parking, especially in this case, because it drains into a stream to the north of the site. So, and it's of course, compared to the existing situation, which has a lot of broken up concrete and loose dirt, this is the stormwater plan that the applicant has in place meets not only our requirements for regular stormwater management, but the additional hotspot guidelines from MDE.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
That's an excellent question. I'm so glad somebody asked.
Thank you. And I think the second question I had, and it's just a refresher, I guess, because I can't remember. And I'm sure we discussed this because I've seen this several times. But I couldn't remember, why is the water line being served by the county and not the city?
Gabrielle, I'm going to let you answer that because I know there's a really simple answer and I don't want to fudge it up.
Sure. There are a couple of both the north kind of western side of the city, as well as down by Ballinger Creek. There are areas that are served by the county's sewer treatment facilities. The why that is in terms of flows and capacities and how that all works, I don't know that I have a super good answer for you, but there are designated areas of the city that we work with that provide all that have their sewer treated through the county.
Okay. Yeah, that was
So-
go ahead.
I can add to that in our review went through our City of Frederick staff to the county and back to so there's a lot of coordination between the two staffs on that particular issue.
Okay, thank you.
Those were great questions. And to follow up on what Gabrielle just said, is it just the sewer treatment or is it also the water that the county provides?
It's just the sewer.
That's what it sounded like from what you said. Okay, very interesting. Okay. Quick question for Sharon. The compensating feature on both modifications are in essence the same,
Correct.
which is fine. It read that way and I thought that's what you were saying. All right. That's it for that item.
Thank you.
No.
I'm signing off. Getting back in the
Okay.
peanut gallery.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. The next agenda item is the final site plan for Riverside Lot 25 or 256R. And this is David.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, fellow commissioners, general public, fellow planning staff. We're here to discuss the minor changes that have occurred since the last time we discussed Riverside Tech Park Lot 256R. One of the big changes that has occurred subsequent to the pre-planning commission meeting or the workshop is that the applicant is no longer looking to pursue a access easement on the eastern property line to allow for automotive vehicular traffic, and they have since decided to reposition their entrances accordingly to have frontage on their property directly and not actually access it from the adjacent property through a cross-access easement. So that's one of the biggest things that's changed since the last time we discussed this case. As well, there was some comments regarding stormwater that basically regarding sediment traps that it'd be required to update as a condition of the planning commission's approval. So the final unconditionally approved plans would eventually reflect this need for a sediment trap to be placed on the site. And we would be looking at asking the applicant to abide by a condition of approval that we can do with the night of the hearing through verbal direction that would then be documented through follow-up communication with the applicant team. But besides that, it's a relatively straightforward project that they've addressed most of the comments staff has had, and they work closely with staff to put forward a project that we can support.
Okay, let me go to commissioners. Commissioner Beatty.
Commissioner Beatty, I have no questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Manalis.
Commissioner Manalis, I did have a question. Back to the stormwater management. I just wanted to get clarification. So you're saying that a sediment trap is required to what? To collect, I guess.
Yeah, it has, I believe Rick can address this, but I believe it has to do with the quantity, quality, and how to limit turbidity in the water and catch sediment. I'm not sure if Rick wants to jump in and comment on that.
Rick's not on the call,
I'm
but
sorry.
he did note that I guess based on the site size being about 10 acres and then it draining into a functioning stormwater facility that the sediment trap was required. I'm not sure of all the logistics about what it's catching and why it's catching things, but it is based on the size and where it is draining into being a functioning stormwater pond facility.
Okay. And it says the applicant will also be required to provide confirmation on the shared use of this regional stormwater facility at the time of the improvement plan review. So they will need to confirm that
that they're draining into a regional pond. So, the way when we talk about environmental site design now, the change that's happened over the past 10 plus years in stormwater is that we've gone from these big regional ponds that you see to treating stormwater on site through smaller mechanism, little bioretention things, all the lovely landscaping you see in parking lots and things like that sometimes. So this project was approved. The overall Riverside Corporate Park was approved many moons ago, before the stormwater regulations changed.
Okay.
So it was built out with the concept of a regional stormwater facility to serve that area. So that's why it received a waiver. It's not that it's being waived from being treated for stormwater management. We're ignoring stormwater. It's that it's not subject to the ESD requirements, that site design, because it's already been accounted for in the calculations for a regional stormwater facility. So what that question or comment is about is just providing confirmation that they were one of the intended users of the stormwater facility.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. And at that time, they will have to confirm that with you guys.
Correct,
you.
and they've already provided some feedback. They said in their initial title report, their initial due diligence period, they did research kind of all the entitlements and things. So we're not concerned that it's an issue.
Good, thank you.
I guess so. So I see that they are taking out the two existing curb cuts in the middle, and they'll be left with the ones on the ends. And they did tell us during the workshop that they might be doing that. Can you remind me about the conversation as to why they initially wanted to do the other format? Is this going to be limiting the access or limiting their use of this lot in any way? And it doesn't sound like, per the staff report, that you have any concerns about this new layout.
Personally, no, I don't think I have strong concerns about the layout. I think one of the challenges, the initial offering of what the site plan was proposed, involved in encroaching into other people's property to gain access to an eastern side of the property, to then follow the lot line to essentially provide interior access for automotive vehicular traffic, as the turning movements did not allow for tractor trailers to navigate that. Those turning, the geometry in those turns, that this creates sort of the lessened need to rely on other property owners for access to the one side of that property. It just results in new configurations that results in the consumption of some parking spaces, but not to the degree that it causes issues for the required amount of parking, but as well sort of limits the applicant's need to essentially deal with another party to access their property.
And does this also limit the size of trucks that can come onto the site then? You mentioned something about their turning radius.
Well, the western property, or the western access point, I believe, provided sufficient movements to
right.
Hold on one second. Yeah, provided sufficient angles for traffic or the truck traffic to navigate it.
But this one puts some limitation on that.
Well, no, I believe that the applicant's intention was that the eastern entrance point, the revised eastern entrance point, would be for automotive passenger vehicular traffic, like people who would be coming to work there or deliver or small deliveries.
Okay.
Where the western side, one that actually provides easy means of turning radiuses to get into that sort of interior loading dock bay area.
And you keep going eastern, western. I have to look. There's only two access points, and they're both
two proposed at this point. Right? Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Thank you. And thank you for doing that. I just wanted to sort of
absolutely
reconnect with their thinking. Okay.
No
And as
problem.
you said, it removes some parking, but it still meets the requirement.
Did also just
Okay.
want to note on Monday night, and I believe David noted, but on Monday night, you also will be taking action on a requested modification for lighting for the spillover onto adjacent properties. The lighting plan that's in the plan set that you have shows a more light spillover. After reviewing the resubmission, we asked them to look at trying to limit that or prevent it. They provided an exhibit that we've attached that will be basically the new lighting plan that will get subbed into the plan set when we approve it. So that's a condition, but even with that revised lighting arrangement, they still have some minimal spillover.
Okay. And the spillover is on other industrial properties.
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. Alrighty then. Next agenda item is Frederick Shoppers World, and this is David also.
Again, thank you, Madam Commissioner, fellow commissioners, staff, and the general public. This is for PC 21-910 FSI Shoppers World. The applicant is proposing a structure to be potentially subdivided between two fast food tenants. They are proposing essentially infill development in the Frederick Shoppers World. The parking lot that fronts on Route 40 for Frederick Shoppers World is a former site of a previously existing restaurant in a similar drive-through capacity, which was razed. The land was subsequently returned to a parking lot. And at this time, the applicant is putting forward this proposal to provide infill development to create some restaurant opportunities, one with an associated drive-through. The applicant has addressed the Golden Mile small area checklist that's been required being along Route 40 in the Golden Mile. They submitted the necessary architectural design narratives. As well, the applicant is seeking to get a modification for the bypass lane for drive-through facilities, as we sometimes find in these situations. And they provided justification accordingly of why their modification request should be granted. But in general, it's a pretty straightforward infill project that'll put some land to a higher and better use than its existing just open sea of asphalt parking lot, and have some investment on the Golden Mile.
So David, I do see that they did have a response to our concern from the workshop. Could you address that on page 7?
Yeah, one second. I gotta move the cursor.
I see what it says.
Oh, which part are you referring to, ma'am? On page.
It's the result of the discussion at December 20th workshop. The applicant has responded to the commission's concerns.
Oh, yes, of course. So they have redesigned their proposed site plan to address the comments from commissioners. And in that revision, they have removed some parking that is not impacting the overall parking counts for the site. And in the space created by the removal of the parking spaces, they have been able to institute a turnaround spot. I'm not sure what a proper technical term would be, but a place to pull a 3-point turn to be able to reorient a car to safely find another drive aisle and then exit the shopping plaza as a whole. But they have addressed those comments, and it's only the loss of one space.
Yeah, okay. And well, here. Commissioners, Commissioner Beatty, any questions? Sorry, I was taking off on my own there.
I do have one question. Is it 2 fast food stores that are going in here, or is it 1 fast food? And for some reason, I thought there was another store that was.
So I lucked out with this slate of cases I was assigned this year, where I had PC 21-506 FSI, which was Aspen Dental Starbucks. Further east on the Golden Mile, right. Very similar, identical land use.
Yeah.
One principal structure subdivided into 2 subordinate uses. One of the uses was going to be a professional office. The other one was a fast food with associated accessory drive-through. So it's essentially a very similar design, just a different applicant team and client But this, as you may be aware, I was talking to staff about this this building concept. You may know over by the movie theater in the South County that over has shoot, I can't remember it, but it has a joint Starbucks and Panda Express over off of Buckystown Pike.
Yeah,
It's,
Westview.
Yeah, West. Thank you. Yeah, it's the same sort of land design. You know, provide, and I believe it has a similar kind of design where the limitations of the parking lot created obstacles to bypass lane inclusion in terms of a land use that gets consumed as part of a development. But it's a roughly identical thing. One principal structure subdivided down the middle with two separate independent users. Is the applicant's intended goal how it all plays out? I'm not sure, but the intention right now is two separate uses. They don't have tenants lined up yet, to my understanding. This is a speculative development, but that their intention is to find end users to populate and start a ongoing business concern in those locations.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Manalis.
Hi, the last time that we spoke about this, I think the applicant had discussed that they wanted same page 7 underneath the paragraph underneath 1, 2, 3. I think there was some discussion about the fact that they wanted a bypass lane, but they were proposing something and the city was proposing something differently. Does it really matter which one? Does the city have a preference or have an issue with what they wanted to do? Okay, I guess a bailout lane.
Not necessarily, and just for clarification, they've made a modification request for that specific requirement for compliance, that they're arguing in their position that the spatial limitations of the parking lot there within don't provide them with the necessary land to include a bypass lane, have the drive-through lane, as well as the existing plan that we see, and still have the margins to have adequate drive aisles, the adequate spacing for parking, the driving routes around the store. So they've been seeking requests to allow the modification of not including that in their bypass.
Okay.
Or not including the bypass in their site plan.
Okay. And staff is fine with that.
When we have infill development opportunities like this, there are a lot of constraints of the built environment that we have to look at in terms of what we can accept, as much as bending or based off of what the applicant is proposing. And when you have the limitations set forth by the existing drive aisles, the circulation patterns in a parking lot, as well as the existing, I don't know what the right word is, character flair, what have you, about a shopping center's parking lot. Those constraints of the built environment often dictate what can be, for lack of a better word, shoehorned into a site. And in this situation, as we've seen in other projects similar to this, like I mentioned, the project further down the east on the Golden Mile, these projects have to work within the parameters they're provided, and sometimes that doesn't necessarily create opportunities for bypass lanes, or in some cases, certain restaurant chains look at double drive-through lanes to begin with. And you can do that if you have that real estate, but I think when we look at infill development opportunities, creative site design is often something that we want to take advantage of and support as well, because the built environment has those limitations. If you have a 10-foot box, you want to try to find something that's going to fit in that 10-foot box within as little margin as you can afford, while also meeting the basic standards of the land management code that we would need applicants to adhere to. But in general, infill development requires creative site design, and for the limitations that the site creates for the applicant for full and strict compliance with the LMC, where there are arguments worth winning and losing, this is something that we can look at as a creative site design that addresses the needs of the LMC while also not, fully letting the applicant take advantage of what the standards we can flex. That they have discussed a bailout path, or a small opening that allows them the ability to sort of, for lack of a better word, escape the drive-through queue. And that provides a compensating design feature that staff feels is adequate to provide the alternative than strict compliance with the LMC regulations.
Thank you, David. That was very thorough. I appreciate your response.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. And I'm going to follow up on that conversation because looking at both the bailout lane as well as this non-maneuverability on, I guess it's the south side of the site. To me, it seems what's going to be critical is signage. And I know signage really isn't part of this process, correct?
I mean, when you say signage, could I maybe offer a more specific terminology called directional wayfinding?
Well, it might be both. So
Okay.
just as cars, and what I'm envisioning is I can absolutely see cars getting in that drive-through lane, even though it says a drive-through this way. I've certainly done that, not thinking that this was a dedicated drive-through lane. So things like that, drive-through lane only, or
Right.
some ways to help someone understand not to go here. And when they talk about a bailout path, if they sign that, and similar to when they're down on the south side of the lot, really being clear not to make a right-hand turn, that is one way only, because that is going to be that's what somebody's going to think they're supposed to do, is make a right-hand turn, because there's really no other way to go other than to turn around in that space.
Sure.
I can just quickly,
that's-
with our pre-planning commission meeting, we don't have the benefit of having the applicants participate. So
do not have these conversations. I'm sorry.
Some of that, their input is very valuable. On Monday, we will have their ability to comment too. Generally, just to quickly answer the question, a lot of times with the improvement plans, we start looking a little bit more about pavement markings, arrows, directional things of that nature. So it may not be nailed down at this time, but would be a little bit more into the specifics of the construction drawings.
And that's what I thought. I just wanted, but you're totally correct that this really is more of a conversation to have with the applicant. But I also appreciate the site constraints.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something like Gabrielle said, that, when we get to that point in the conversation with the applicant, we just essentially it would behoove us to ask for more robust directional wayfinding, entrance denial kind of markings that would obviously be implemented at the IP stage. But everything Gabrielle said was on point.
I still might bring it up if the applicant doesn't.
I mean,
yes,
I would
to get that on the
I would
record.
urge you to do so as well.
Okay.
You have my support to do that as well. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. All right. That brings us to, we have 2 items for Kellerton. We have, well, actually 3, but technically 2. The combined preliminary plat, the final site plan, and the preliminary forest conservation. And this is Gabrielle.
Yes, let me do one thing at a time because I'll get confused. Let's see. So we'll start with guys. All right. So we have the Kellerton Land Bay D&E combined preliminary plat and final site plan. This is also constituting the dedication of the park, so keep that in mind for Monday night as you're approving not only the subdivision plans, but the approval of the dedication of parkland with the proposal to plant some afforestation in the parkland, as well as the site design. In the case of this design of the phase 2 parkland, the applicant is only constructing the major shared use path trail that will run through the park. That's what they're obligated under their annexation agreement, I believe, to construct. Everything else will ultimately be city improvements that we will make when we have a budget for. With regards to the park, there were some comments at the workshop that the applicant was showing some multiple pedestrian paths. They were proposing them to be kind of a natural material from the shared use path location. And I'm just going to stay on this kind of very large scale plan because it captures everything. They were talking about having some natural paths that would kind of meander through some of the open spaces. We had asked them to remove those, so they have done that. There will be one connection basically from this shared use path section to land base C. As you can see, kind of running through here, that will be something that will be in the city public park land. The applicant will be constructing it and the HOA will be maintaining it, and the construction will occur at the same time as land base C. So just something important to note there, that they have revised that. It's related to the forest conservation plan, but they also have amended an area of forest conservation that they were showing basically between Yellow Springs Road and the ball fields that our Parks and Rec Department staff did not want. They didn't want that obscuring the site at the park, as well as concerns that it might not aesthetically, because it's supposed to be a natural growing area, it might not aesthetically be the best kind of entrance to the park. They've picked up that forest conservation on the other side and are accommodating for it, so they have not lost any acreage. We do have a number of modifications that are requested, some related to the street improvement standards, both for the length of dead end or cul-de-sacs that aren't going to extend any further. They also have the request for the landscaping island in the middle of the cul-de-sacs that I think we discussed with Land Base C is not preference or desirable from our DPW folks in terms of snow plows and maintenance. And then there's also the request for relief from the landscaping requirement for the median in the entrance at Yellow Springs Road. And that is to prevent any obstructions to site distance, to allow for the proper crosswalks to be constructed, etc. So those are the street improvement requirements. Oh, I'm sorry, we also have the modification to the requirement for curb and gutter. Instead of having the 6-inch vertical curb, they have open section. That's consistent with the rest of the development. And then there's also the, and Jeremy brought it up and we did capture it in our staff report, the request for the landscaping buffer modification along the lot that's in the county. These lots here, hopefully everybody can see with my red arrow, are required to have a level 1 buffer. It was upon request of the adjacent property owner that they not install that. There is still landscaping in these locations, but it doesn't meet the level 1 requirement, and that was at their request due to wanting to maintain kind of unobstructed view sheds. The other areas, they'll be using their forest conservation areas along the periphery to provide those that level 1 buffer requirement. And I believe that hits on the modifications for the preliminary plat and subdivision.
Street trees?
Oh, street trees. Yes, thank you. The street trees, they are requesting to plant some of them on private properties within easements, and that's a modification that we've also considered in other sections of the neighborhood, and that's due to constraints in terms of utility placement and limited spacing in the streets. So they have planted as many in the public right of way as possible, which is the city's preference, but the other locations will be covered by an access and maintenance easement for the city. What else can we think of? Oh, they did provide a detail. This isn't referenced in the staff report because there really wasn't any specific decision points that had to be made relative to it. But we did spend a lot of time at the workshop discussing how that section in front of lots 835 through 839 would look with regards to the proposed trail, and then having the sites kind of elevated upstairs with a landscape, or I'm sorry, a retaining wall. So they did provide this exhibit, which is actually pretty helpful. You've got both the plan view as well as some schematics of what it would look like, and then a cross section showing you exactly how everything would look. So like I said, there's not really any decision point in the staff report related to it, but that's
nothing has changed since the workshop.
Otherwise, no, on the changes to the park land that I discussed, getting rid of the path connections and modifying the forest conservation area.
Okay. All right, Commissioner Beatty, any questions?
Commissioner Beatty, no questions, one comment. I think that graphic really helps because that was confusing a lot of people in terms of what the elevation differences were. I think that's going to be very helpful for Monday.
Commissioner Manalis.
Commissioner Manals, no questions, thank you.
Okay. I want to, and I know you were covering this. Let me go back to the modification, make sure I understand this. It's more about the language. Which one is it? Might be. Oh, it's 5. Cul-de-sacs with no potential for future extension shall include a permanent area. Now, what is a permanent area?
Permanent, and probably should have had the landscape area. I'll look back at the language of the code, but the idea is that you're having a permanently designed island.
That's what I thought. So landscaping. And can you remind us why they're not going to do that?
A lot of it actually has to do with the city's preference in terms of operations in certain cul-de-sacs to be able to maintain both snow plowing activity like we see on a day like today and maneuverability for those larger vehicles.
So is this something, because we have hit this before, that should be changed in the code?
So probably it's one of those things that, there are always pushing and pulling competing interests, I think, between design and operations. Not always, when we work through most of those issues a lot of the times, but it definitely, we have competing interests sometimes in terms of what we think are ideal designs, and then functionally what is what we can serve with the equipment that we have. So it's always a good conversation to have when we're looking at our street standards and those sorts of things to understand the balance of design and ability to operate and maintain.
Okay. And again, you probably covered this. I was just going through it fast. Where is this? You started this out saying this is also going to be the approval of the city parkland dedication. Is it the approval, or is that just part of the site plan?
So the dedication of land is officially approved through the preliminary plat activity. So this is really in approving this preliminary plat and this dedication. That's why we've gone to the Parks and Rec Commission. We've gotten their feedback. We are saying, yes, this is the land we want to accept for our public park. It's not the actual acceptance of it, the actual transfer test that will occur later. But one of the things in the staff report we capture with the forest conservation is that when an applicant is desiring to put forest in a land that then they're also saying, hey, we want to give this to you, that's a permanent encumbrance on the land, a good one, but that requires then the mayor and board to make that official approval, and that's why it's one of your conditions of approval, that yes, this is, we want this dedication with the forest conservation. We recognize what it does in terms of limitations on maybe future active uses and the responsibilities that come with that easement. So after the planning commission's approval, it would then go to the mayor and board as a condition for them to say yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else on the preliminary forest conservation plan? Did we basically cover that at the same time?
Yeah, the only change to that has been that adjustment to, and I can bring it up if it.
Well, there's the 12 specimen trees.
I'm sorry, yes, there is the modification to the specimen trees as well. Let me share this real quick, just so we're all. And the change that's occurred. So the area, they previously had kind of like a finger-like extension of this green proposed forest conservation area. That our Parks and Rec staff didn't think was appropriate. So they've scooted it over here on the other side of the field, in between the field and the shared use path. And it still continues to meet all the minimum width and size requirements for a forest conservation easement.
Okay, thank you. Let's query the commissioners. Commissioner Beatty.
Commissioner Beatty, no questions, thanks.
Okay, Commissioner Manalis.
Commissioner Manals, no questions, thank you.
I'm good too. All right. 2 more items. Next one is the mixed use plan for the Wayside Apartments. And this is actually a revised plan, right?
Yes, as the staff report's telling you here, they're going from, they're asking from 81 units to 85 units. This, as we understand, will not change any of your aspects of size of building and everything that they have gone through with the HPC for review of a site plan and everything beforehand. We have given you a pending site plan just as informational, for you to look at, only because at one, they went through a rezoning and you saw a preliminary site plan before that went to the mayor and board. So this site plan's their formal site plan coming in for approval, but when it came in, they were asking for more units. So they had to come back and revise this master plan for 4 additional units. And basically that is what we've got here before you. And it's only got a few comments as cleanup goes, technical comments at the end just for cleanup, and nothing major to, in their mind, concerned with.
Pam, I see a few paragraphs here referencing the workshop. Can you talk about those?
Let me go check.
Page 7.
Okay, I got one for their assessment for paying for the schools, for the LIHTC, for
Right.
And everything. That was a question I think Commissioner Manellis had. And I explained that in more here and just wanted to document it in the staff report. And let me see, there was one on the parking. You wanted to know if those additional units were going to require more parking. And as I was saying, that with the site plan, they're going to have to meet their minimum parking requirement. And they've already they are requesting a 50% reduction that is allowed in the ordinance for a quarter mile, having transit station available. And basically, they're going to have to meet their parking minimum. No more modifications available. And did I have any more? I think that was it, right?
So I saw.
Yeah. So I was just documenting that we had responded to your questions at the workshop.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's and this is the first of 2 required hearings because it is a master plan.
Right.
Okay. Commissioner Beatty, any further questions, comments?
Commissioner Beatty, no questions. Thanks.
Okay. Commissioner Manellis?
Commissioner Manellis, no questions. Thank you.
Okay. So now we go to the zoning text amendment on annexation.
Yes, so this was continued from last month. Rachel was still working on some of the research in the language. She was adding about detachment or de-annexation. So that has been added to the draft ordinance since you saw it at the workshop in November, I believe. That states basically that the Board of Aldermen may enact a charter amendment to detach a piece of property upon the request of any person or on the board's own initiative. So that is consistent with what she had found in the research under Maryland Code and case law that she had looked at. So that's, I believe, the only change that we made. I don't think there were any other edits to it. Once again, the part of the driving force before adding the provisions about detachment were to kind of break apart the annexation resolution versus an annexation agreement. So the annexation resolution being kind of the formal ceremonial document that's defining the new metes and bounds of the municipality and the land we're taking in. And then the annexation agreement is where we're making requirements like the applicant contributing to certain things or limitations on the scope or development of it. So that'll allow for a much more, in the event that there are requests to amend those terms, which we have had, it'll make for a much more streamlined process.
So Gabrielle, section K has been added newly since the last time that we talked about this.
Correct.
Let's have questions and comments. Commissioner Beatty.
Commissioner BD, no questions, thanks.
Commissioner Manalis.
Commissioner Ellis, just, more so an observation or a comment in regards to K. Interesting that there's a de-annexation, and what would that all mean? I mean, if you already had something annexed and then now, is there a time frame in which you can do that? What are the implications? When is it what happens if we've already annexed, land into the city and, I don't know, 6 months pass by? How does that work?
So there are no time constraints. So if we annex something 50 years ago and then decided we don't want it anymore, someone asks to be released from the city's municipal boundary, they could. So there's no time constraints. The criteria that we did, stick in K, add to, give kind of the considerations that the mayor and board would look at. Has the property been improved? What are the implications? Who's it being served by? How's it going to continue to be served? Will we create an enclave by de-annexing? And then, of course, any consistency with the comprehensive plan. It is not something that I've seen in my almost 20 years now doing planning. Joe mentioned that there was a request at some point in the past I think there was one request he could recall, and then one issue where we actually, it was a clerical error, like it wasn't like de-annexing a bunch of homes or anything, that there was some boundary adjustment that had to be done. But I don't see it being kind of a widely used provision, but I think we have good bones for what the mayor and board would have to look at, because you would have a whole lot of coordination. If you have something on city water and sewer, and then you're proposing to de-annex it, how does that work? Are you cutting them off of water and sewer and telling them to find well and septic?
Right.
So there are definite ramifications.
Thank you. Just curious.
That was a good conversation. I don't have any questions. So do we want to fill Dorothy in during the regular meeting, or should we close the meeting first and ask her to stay on and have a conversation?
Since we are a quorum, we should probably, we can have the discussion now while we're open. And Dorothy, if you'd like, Barb, Alderman Russell did step in the meeting at the beginning to notify everyone that she was no longer our aldermanic representative on or full voting member on the Planning Commission, that her term has expired. There has not been a new appointment made yet. We will have a new appointed member to the Planning Commission, but she is no longer with us. So obviously from staff and I think from all the other commission members, it's a tremendous loss. She has done amazing, as she is thoughtful and hardworking and genuine about her interest in planning and zoning. And so from a staff perspective, that is, that's a good thing to find. And when you got it, it's hard to lose it. So she won't be at the hearing on Monday. And we will have a new appointment soon.
Okay. They'll make an announcement, I guess, a formal announcement about the new appointees.
Sure. The board will vote on it at a upcoming meeting. I don't know if they'll have it scheduled for their next meeting, but we'll of course make sure you guys are aware when that does occur. We still, and I don't believe, and I did not have a chance to check with Carrie Ann beforehand, but I don't believe we've received any applications for our alternate member. That's still outstanding. So if you have friends, relatives, people who are interested in planning and zoning, live in the city, and have some skills to bring, we would, please spread the word. It's a hard time of year to get interest, and COVID doesn't help, and
Right.
all those good things. So hopefully that appointment will be made soon. So, you know, we have as many commission members. It's a lot of pressure on everyone when this is it. So that as soon as we can.
Okay. Do we know if Joan's going to be joining us on Monday?
No, she will not. So if for some reason, you know, nothing bad, but if for some reason you foresee that you will not be able to attend Monday night's meeting, give us a heads up so we can know just to cancel, because we are working with our kind of skeleton crew. But I will send out an email too, because we do have the elections. I want to make sure Joan is aware too. We have the elections. So that's a lot of moving pieces right now, but do the best we can.
Yep. Well, thank you. I know that Gabrielle gave a little bit of that speech at the end, but I didn't think you were on, Dorothy. So thank you for doing that again. And
Yeah.
all right. Well, everybody have a very good weekend. We'll see you Monday, and the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.